Let us travel back to 1999, a year that many film historians consider the absolute peak of the modern cinematic era. This was the year of The Matrix, Fight Club, and Star Wars Episode I. But in the middle of this high-intensity marketplace, Universal Pictures was preparing to release a project that many industry insiders thought was a massive capital risk. We are talking about The Mummy. To truly decode the birth of this $80 million enterprise, we have to understand the industry framing of the late 90s. Universal had been sitting on The Mummy intellectual property for decades, ever since the iconic 1932 Boris Karloff version defined the horror genre. For nearly 9 years, the studio had been trying to find a way to reboot this asset, but every attempt had stalled. They had gone through legendary names like Clive Barker, George A. Romero, and Wes Craven, all of whom wanted to make a dark, low-budget horror film. But Universal was looking for something bigger. They were looking for a high RPM summer blockbuster that could achieve a state-of-art tech capital harmony on a global scale. Enter Stephen Sommers. When he walked into the boardroom, he didn't bring a horror script. He brought a vision for a high-adventure, swashbuckling epic that combined the DNA of Indiana Jones with the cutting-edge visual engineering of industrial light and magic. This was a fundamental shift in the batasse of the franchise. Sommers understood that in 1999, the audience was hungry for a sense of wonder and fun, rather than just jump scares. He proposed a narrative that would require a massive capital investment, $80 million, which was a staggering amount for a project that didn't have an A-list, $10 million movie star at the helm. This was a classic case of capital exposure, where the studio was betting on the brand and the technology rather than a singular human asset. Universal was effectively performing a high-stakes audit of the summer market, hoping that a fresh, fun take on ancient Egypt would provide the ultimate return on investment. Let us look at the casting as a strategic allocation of human capital. At the time, Brendan Fraser was known for comedies like George of the Jungle. He wasn't the obvious choice for a rugged action hero. But from an analytical perspective, Fraser was the perfect asset. He brought a specific blend of physicality and self-deprecating humor that made the character of Rick O'Connell relatable. He wasn't a brooding, invincible soldier, he was a man who was clearly out of his depth but had the technical integrity to keep moving forward. This was a masterclass in brand positioning. By casting Fraser, the filmmakers ensured the movie wouldn't take itself too seriously, which mitigated the risk of being seen as a dry, academic period piece. Then you have Rachel Weisz as Evelyn Carnahan. In 1999, she was a rising star who brought a level of academic prestige and genuine wit to the screen. She wasn't just a damsel in distress, she was the narrative's intellectual engine. Her character represented the academic asset that drives the entire search for Hamunaptra. Together, their chemistry provided an emotional ROI that the studio couldn't have predicted, turning a risky remake into a character-driven epic. The production of The Mummy was a logistical nightmare that required peak operational efficiency. Sommers decided to film in Morocco rather than Egypt due to political instability, which meant the production management team had to essentially build the city of Hamunaptra from scratch in the middle of a dormant volcano near Urfaud. Think about the leadership stress involved in managing a crew of hundreds in the Sahara Desert. They were facing heatstroke, sandstorms, and the constant threat of scorpions and snakes. From a behavioral economic standpoint, the crew was working in a high-volatility environment where the cost of failure was measured in both dollars and human safety. The studio was effectively investing millions into a sand-swept desert, hoping that the visual engineering captured on 35mm film would justify the logistical nightmare. This was the batasse of the 90s blockbuster: real locations, real sweat, and real stakes. We also have to analyze the technological ambition of this project. Sommers knew that if the mummy himself, Imhotep, didn't look terrifying and real, the entire enterprise would fail. This led to a critical strategic partnership with Industrial Light and Magic. In 1999, digital effects were still in a period of rapid evolution. The team at ILM had to decode the challenge of creating a creature that was part human and part digital wrought. They used a combination of motion capture, a relatively new tech at the time, and complex procedural textures to bring Arnold Vosloo's performance to life. Vosloo was a high-value asset here, providing the physical presence that the digital artists would build upon. This was a form of visual risk management. By grounding the digital mummy in a real human performance, they avoided the uncanny valley and created a villain that felt like a tangible threat. The capital investment in ILM's rendering power was a primary driver of the film's eventual market dominance. The marketing strategy for The Mummy was a study in CPM-driven hype. Universal knew they had a hit on their hands after seeing early test footage of the sandstorm sequence. They released trailers that focused on the high RPM action and the supernatural spectacle, positioning the film as the definitive event of the early summer. They were targeting a broad demographic, from the kids who loved the ancient Egyptian lore to the adults who remembered the classic horror films. The campaign was engineered to create a sense of urgency, using the tagline, "Death is only the beginning," to hook the audience's imagination. This was a masterclass in building brand equity. They weren't just selling a movie, they were selling an experience that felt like a theme park ride brought to life. The return on investment for the marketing spend was immediate, as the film generated a massive buzz before it even hit the theaters. One of the most interesting aspects of the industry framing around The Mummy was how it managed to survive the shadow of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Released just weeks apart, many thought Star Wars would liquidate the competition. But Universal's analytical team had performed a correct audit of the market. They realized that while Star Wars was a massive corporate machine, The Mummy offered a different kind of joy, a more grounded, adventurous, and funny alternative. This provided a perfect product-market fit. The Mummy acted as a hedge against the Star Wars mania, capturing the audience that wanted a classic swashbuckling adventure. This strategic timing ensured that the film didn't get buried in the sand but instead rose to become one of the highest-grossing films of the year, with a global take of over $400 million. When we examine the final product of Step 1, we see a film that successfully navigated the complexity risk of rebooting a legacy IP. Stephen Sommers managed to synthesize the art of the adventure with the tech of ILM and the capital of Universal. The result was a high-definition cinematic landmark that redefined what a summer blockbuster could be. It wasn't just about the CGI, it was about the harmony of the cast, the locations, and the storytelling. This first step in our autopsy reveals a studio that was willing to take a massive gamble on a specific vision, and a creative team that had the operational discipline to execute that vision in the harshest conditions on Earth. The Mummy was a high RPM success story that proved that if you respect the badass of the genre while innovating with technology, you can create a durable asset that resonates for decades. As we move forward in our 13-step review, we will start to break down the actual plot, the character arcs, and the deeper layers of the visual and auditory engineering that made this film a masterpiece. We will look at how the opening sequence in ancient Egypt set the stage for a 3,000-year-old grudge and how the discovery of the Book of the Dead acted as the ultimate narrative catalyst. The journey from Cairo to the City of the Dead is paved with gold, sand, and high-stakes action, and we are just getting started. The return on your attention capital is about to hit its peak as we dive into Act 1 of this desert epic. We have framed the industry context and the capital risk of this 1999 enterprise. In Step 2, we will examine the opening act of the story, focusing on the forbidden love of Imhotep and Enkidu and how their capital loss in the past becomes the driving force of the entire narrative. We will decode the setup of Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan as they form a strategic partnership to uncover the secrets of Hamunaptra. Get ready, because the seal is about to be broken, and the curse is more real than you can imagine. We begin our deep dive into the narrative by traveling back 3,000 years to the Golden City of Thebes. This prologue is not just an introduction, it is a masterclass in visual engineering and industry framing. The year is 1290 BC, and we are introduced to Imhotep, the high priest of Osiris, and Enkidu, the pharaoh's mistress. From a behavioral economics perspective, their relationship is the ultimate bad investment. They are operating in a high-volatility environment where the badass of the pharaoh's court is absolute. The law is clear, no man shall touch the pharaoh's mistress. By entering into this forbidden affair, they are accepting a level of risk exposure that eventually leads to a total liquidation of their lives. When Pharaoh Seti I discovers their betrayal, the resulting violence is not just a plot point, it is a catastrophic capital loss for the entire Egyptian empire. The assassination of the pharaoh is the ultimate market disruption, leading to the immediate arrest and ritualistic execution of the lovers. Let us look at the technical integrity of this opening sequence. Stephen Sommers utilized a brilliant color science here, saturating the screen with deep golds, vibrant blues, and the stark reds of the Egyptian desert. This wasn't just aesthetic, it was an investment in cultural prestige. The set design for the pharaoh's chambers was engineered to look like a premium asset, grounding the supernatural elements in a tangible, wealthy reality. When Enkidu takes her own life, believing Imhotep can resurrect her, she is betting her entire soul on his technical mastery of the dark arts. This sets up the narrative's primary debt, a 3,000-year-old grudge that requires a massive return on investment in the form of human sacrifice. The punishment for Imhotep, the Hamdai, is portrayed as the worst curse known to man. It is a form of eternal capital drain where the soul is kept alive while the body is consumed by flesh-eating scarabs. This is the ultimate risk management failure by Imhotep, and it serves as the foundation for the high RPM terror that follows in the modern era. The visual effects here, managed by Industrial Light and Magic, were state-of-the-art for 1999. To decode the technical work, we have to appreciate how they blended practical makeup with early digital rotoscoping to show the transition of the priests being mummified alive. This was a significant allocation of production capital toward a sequence that lasts only a few minutes, but it establishes the technical integrity of the entire film. If the audience didn't buy the horror of the Hamdai, the rest of the adventure would have no emotional weight. The leadership stress on the set during these ancient Egyptian scenes was intense, as the heat and the elaborate costumes required the actors to perform at a high RPM level despite the physical discomfort. Arnold Vosloo's performance as Imhotep provides a brooding, powerful anchor to this prologue, ensuring that the villain has a clear psychological motivation, the recovery of his lost love, which he views as his ultimate personal asset. Now, we fast forward to 1923. The world has changed, but the sand of Hamunaptra remains a site of immense untapped potential. We are introduced to Rick O'Connell, played by Brendan Fraser, who is currently serving in the French Foreign Legion. He is at the City of the Dead, but not as an explorer, he is a soldier caught in a high-intensity combat scenario. This sequence is a marvel of production management, featuring hundreds of extras and real explosions that provide a high level of action ROI. Rick is portrayed as the ultimate competent asset. He is the only one who truly understands the tactical geography of the ruins. When his unit is liquidated by the Medjay warriors, Rick is left as a lone survivor, managing a massive amount of risk exposure as he faces the supernatural wind that protects the city. This scene is critical because it establishes Rick's brand equity as a hero who can survive the impossible. The Medjay themselves are a fascinating analytical component of the story. They are a multi-generational risk management team, dedicated to ensuring that the Imhotep asset remains frozen in the sand. Led by Ardith Bey, played by Oded Fehr, they represent the Batas of the desert. Their role is to prevent any external capital from entering Hamunaptra and accidentally triggering the resurrection. From a narrative perspective, they provide the necessary friction that keeps the story high RPM. They aren't just villains, they are the desert's regulatory body, trying to prevent a global market collapse caused by the return of the mummy. Oded Fehr brings a regal, intense energy to the role, making the Medjay feel like a credible and ancient force of technical integrity. We then shift to Cairo in 1926, 3 years after Rick's narrow escape. Here we meet our intellectual assets, Evelyn Carnahan and her brother Jonathan. Rachel Weisz plays Evelyn as a brilliant but underappreciated librarian at the Museum of Antiquities. She represents the academic capital that the film needs to bridge the gap between myth and reality. The library scene is a classic piece of character-driven visual engineering. The massive shelf collapse stunt was performed practically, requiring a high degree of operational efficiency to pull off in a single take. This scene establishes Evelyn's personality, clumsy in the physical world but a high-performance engine in the world of books and ancient languages. Her goal is the recovery of knowledge, which she views as the ultimate return on investment for her career. Jonathan Carnahan, played by John Hannah, is the film's primary source of comedic relief and a high-risk social liability. He is a thief and a gambler, always looking for a quick payout without considering the long-term risk. When he acquires a mysterious puzzle box from a sleeping Rick O'Connell, he sets the entire plot in motion. This box is the ultimate narrative key, a piece of technical engineering that contains the map to Hamunaptra. Jonathan's decision to show the map to Evelyn is the first step in a strategic partnership that will lead them back to the City of the Dead. Hannah's performance provides a light-hearted contrast to the looming supernatural threat, ensuring that the film's pacing remains high RPM even during the dialogue-heavy setup. The negotiation at the Cairo prison is where our main trio finally comes together. Rick is facing execution, a total liquidation of his physical assets. Evelyn, realizing that Rick is the only one who knows the exact coordinates of Hamunaptra, initiates a high-stakes negotiation with the prison warden. This is a brilliant piece of behavioral economics. She has to convince the warden that Rick's life is worth more as a guide than as a corpse. The warden, a greedy and corrupt asset played by Omid Jalili, represents the low-integrity friction that our heroes have to navigate. By promising him a cut of the legendary Egyptian treasure, Evelyn secures Rick's release, effectively performing a bailout of his life. The chemistry during this prison meeting is the emotional foundation of the film. Rick's weary, cynical humor clashes with Evelyn's earnest academic passion, creating a synergy that the audience can immediately buy into. Brendan Fraser's delivery of the line, "I'll give you 5% to the warden, only to have the warden demand more," shows the high-stakes financial negotiation that underlies the adventure. They are all entering into a high-risk portfolio, betting their lives on the existence of a city that most people think is a myth. For Evelyn, it is about the Book of Ammonius Ra, the ultimate intellectual asset. For Jonathan and the warden, it is about the gold. For Rick, it is initially about survival, but we soon see his own internal management shifting toward protecting Evelyn. As they prepare to leave Cairo, we see the introduction of the rival team, the American treasure hunters led by the unscrupulous Benny Gabor. Benny is the ultimate low-integrity asset, a former comrade of Rick's who abandoned him during the battle at Hamunaptra. He is now working for a group of Americans who are allocating massive amounts of capital toward their own excavation. This creates a competitive market for the discovery of the city, ensuring that the journey to Hamunaptra is a high-speed race. Benny represents the worst kind of risk, the one that comes from within your own team. His willingness to flip his loyalty to the highest bidder makes him a dangerous variable in the film's narrative analytics. The stage is now set. Our heroes have the map, the key, and the guide. They are about to embark on a journey that will take them across the Nile and deep into the heart of the Sahara. The production management required to film the journey to the city involved massive logistical planning, including the use of period-accurate ships and trains to enhance the film's technical integrity. Every shot of the Cairo docks and the riverboat, the Princess, was engineered to look like a high-value historical asset, immersing the audience in the 1920s atmosphere. The investment in these practical sets and costumes provided a visual ROI that digital effects alone could never replicate. In conclusion of this second step, we have successfully decoded the opening act of The Mummy. We have seen how the forbidden love in ancient Thebes created a supernatural debt that is about to be called in. We have witnessed the strategic partnership formed between a soldier, a librarian, and a thief. The market entry into the search for Hamunaptra has been completed, and the growth and development phase is about to begin. The stakes are rising, the competition is fierce, and the sands of time are starting to shift. The return on your attention capital is about to be validated as we prepare for the high-intensity journey to the city of the dead. We have framed the characters, the conflict, and the technical foundation of the story. In our next segment, we will explore the journey across the desert and the arrival at Hamunaptra. We will analyze the high RPM boat fire sequence, the first encounter with the Medjai on the river, and the beginning of the excavation. Get ready, because the race for the gold and the books is on, and the mummy is waiting to be awakened. The journey toward the city of the dead truly begins on the deck of the riverboat known as the Princess. From a production management perspective, this sequence is a vital piece of the film's narrative pacing, transitioning us from the urban chaos of Cairo to the isolated volatility of the deep desert. The boat itself is a high-value historical asset, a floating stage where our various characters are forced into a state of close-quarters psychological friction. We see Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan managing their limited resources while keeping a watchful eye on their competitors. The American team, led by the bombastic Henderson, Daniels, and Stanway, represents a high-capital enterprise backed by the technical expertise of the Egyptologist Dr. Alan Chamberlain. This creates a competitive market for the discovery of Hamunaptra, where the first team to reach the site will secure the primary claim on the legendary treasures. The interaction between these two groups is a study in behavioral economics, where pride and greed drive the high RPM energy of the trip. As the sun sets over the Nile, the atmosphere shifts into a high-risk scenario. The boat journey is interrupted by a tactical strike from the Medjai. This is the first time we see the Medjai operating as an active regulatory body, attempting to liquidate the excavation teams before they can reach the forbidden coordinates. The nighttime attack is a masterclass in visual engineering, utilizing fire, shadows, and high-speed choreography to create a sense of imminent danger. Rick O'Connell immediately enters his high-performance combat mode, utilizing his technical mastery of firearms to defend the ship. The leadership stress on the deck is palpable as the Medjai use grappling hooks and traditional weapons to swarm the vessel. This sequence provides a significant action ROI for the audience, serving as a reminder that the desert has its own set of batas that our heroes are currently violating. The fire on the boat is the ultimate catastrophic asset loss for the expedition. As the ship is consumed by flames, the characters are forced to perform a strategic exit, jumping into the dark waters of the Nile. This moment is a total system reboot for our protagonists. They lose their luggage, their supplies, and their sense of security, left only with the clothes on their backs and the technical knowledge in their heads. Evelyn, in particular, is forced to manage her own panic, relying on Rick's physical competence to survive the swim to shore. This loss of material capital forces the characters to rely on their internal assets, their wit, their courage, and their collective synergy. On the riverbank, we see the first real moment of teamwork between the trio, as they realize that the path to Hamunaptra is going to be far more expensive than they initially calculated. The next morning, the journey transitions from the river to the sand. The race to Hamunaptra becomes a study in logistics and endurance. Rick manages to secure a fleet of camels, which are the high-performance vehicles of the Sahara. The American team, meanwhile, has invested their capital in a more luxurious but slower caravan. This creates a high RPM race across the dunes, where the geography itself acts as a barrier to entry. The cinematography here is breathtaking, utilizing wide-angle lenses to capture the vast, indifferent scale of the desert. Stephen Sommers used the natural beauty of the Moroccan landscape to enhance the film's technical integrity, making the audience feel the heat and the isolation of the trek. This wasn't just a movie set, it was a high-value location that provided a visual ROI that no studio backlit could ever match. Benny Gabor, the low-integrity asset we discussed earlier, is seen leading the Americans. His role as a double agent is a constant source of risk exposure for Rick. Benny knows the way, but his loyalty is a high-volatility variable. He is always looking for the highest bidder, and his presence on the rival team ensures that the tension remains peak. The interaction between Rick and Benny is a masterclass in psychological friction. Rick views Benny as a sunk cost, a man he should have liquidated years ago, while Benny views Rick as a threat to his own survival and profit. This personal grudge adds a layer of character-driven analytics to the race, making it about more than just finding gold, it's about settling old debts. The arrival at Hamunaptra at sunrise is one of the most iconic moments in 1999 cinema. The visual engineering of the city appearing out of the shadows as the sun hits the sand is a masterpiece of light and perspective. The set design for the City of the Dead was a massive capital investment, built within a real volcanic crater in Morocco. This provided a tangible, physical reality that grounded the supernatural themes. When our heroes first lay eyes on the ruins, the emotional ROI is peak. For Evelyn, it is the realization of an academic dream, for Rick, it is a return to a site of past trauma, and for Jonathan, it is the site of potential liquid assets buried beneath the dust. The city is a repository of ancient capital, a silent market waiting for its first trade in 3,000 years. The excavation begins with a high-stakes division of the site. The American team takes the high-profile area under the statue of Anubis, while Rick and Evelyn focus on the base of the statue, looking for the legendary Book of Ammonius Ra. This is a classic piece of competitive market analysis. The Americans are looking for the obvious treasure, the gold and the jewels, while Evelyn is looking for the intellectual property of the ancients. This strategic difference is what eventually leads to the divergent outcomes for the two teams. The production management of the excavation scenes involved an incredible attention to detail, from the period-accurate tools and tents to the dusty, claustrophobic atmosphere of the underground tunnels. Every unit of the set was engineered to look like a high-value archaeological site, reinforcing the film's technical integrity. Down in the tunnels, the danger shifts from the external desert to the internal traps of the tomb. The filmmakers used practical effects and mechanical engineering to create the various traps that protect the mummy's chamber. This is where we see Evelyn's academic capital in action. She uses mirrors to illuminate the tunnels, a brilliant piece of ancient technical engineering that provides a high level of visual ROI for the scene. This isn't just a clever trick, it's a demonstration of how the ancients managed their own lighting physics. As they move deeper into the ruins, the leadership stress increases. The warden, who followed them for a share of the loot, becomes a tragic example of poor risk management when he falls victim to a wall trap. His liquidation is a stark reminder that Hamunaptra does not forgive those who lack technical respect for its batasse. While Rick and Evelyn are exploring the lower levels, the Americans discover a sarcophagus that appears to be covered in a high-risk curse. Dr. Chamberlain, despite his technical knowledge, is unable to prevent the team from opening the chest. This is the moment of ultimate risk exposure. By breaking the seal, they are initiating a market event that cannot be undone. The chest contains the jars that hold the organs of Anxunamun and the Book of the Dead, a black obsidian volume that represents the dark side of Egyptian intellectual capital. The Americans view these as curiosities to be sold, but the Medjai, watching from the shadows, know that these are the keys to a global disaster. The tension during this sequence is canalcula to perfection, as the audience waits for the first sign of the mummy's return. The first encounter with the mummified remains of Imhotep is a triumph of both practical and digital engineering. Rick and Evelyn find the sarcophagus that was buried beneath the feet of Anubis, the one meant for the man whose soul was cursed with the Hamdai. When they open it and the desiccated, screaming corpse falls out, the horror ROI is immediate. Rachel Weisz's performance here perfectly captures the blend of academic curiosity and primal fear. She realizes that she is looking at a biological asset that has been kept in a state of suffering for 3 millennia. This discovery is the narrative catalyst that will lead to the final system failure of the expedition. The technical integrity of the mummy prop, with its twisted limbs and hollowed eyes, provides a visceral reality that sets the stage for the CGI transformations to come. As the first day of the excavation ends, the two teams are at a stalemate. The Americans have the jars and the black book, while Evelyn has the map and the key. The competition for the city's secrets has created a volatile environment where the Medjai are preparing for a final liquidation of all trespassers. The leadership stress on Rick is at an all-time high as he tries to balance his protective instincts for Evelyn with his own tactical understanding of the desert's dangers. He knows that they have crossed a line, and the return on their investment is about to be measured in blood. The night in the desert camp is a study in quiet, high-stakes anticipation, as the characters wait for the first move from the shadows. In conclusion of this third step, we have successfully decoded the journey and the arrival at the City of the Dead. We have seen the high RPM action of the boat fire, the strategic race across the dunes, and the beginning of a high-risk excavation that has uncovered a 3,000-year-old debt. The market for ancient secrets is officially open, and the price of entry is about to skyrocket. The technical and visual engineering of the film has grounded us in the 1920s adventure, providing a high level of immersion and narrative momentum. The return on your attention capital is now guaranteed as we prepare to see the seal of the Book of the Dead broken, an act that will trigger the total system failure of the modern world. We have reached the heart of the ruins. In our next step, we will examine the awakening of Imhotep. We will analyze the sequence where Evelyn reads from the Book of the Dead, the first physical manifestation of the mummy, and the horrific cost of the curse as it begins to claim its first victims. Get ready, because the ancient priest is waking up, and he is looking for a way to recover his lost assets. The sun sets over Hamunaptra, and the atmosphere in the desert camp shifts from the heat of manual labor to the cold, high-stakes tension of the unknown. As the campfires flicker against the ancient stones of the City of the Dead, we see our protagonists managing their limited psychological capital. Rick O'Connell is performing a tactical sweep of the perimeter, his internal risk management system telling him that the silence of the desert is a deceptive market signal. Meanwhile, Evelyn Carnahan is preparing for the ultimate piece of unauthorized data retrieval. She knows that the American team has recovered the Black Obsidian Book, the Book of the Dead, and she views this as the primary intellectual property of the entire expedition. To Evelyn, leaving this book in the hands of the Americans is a tragic misallocation of knowledge. This leads her to commit a daring act of academic espionage, sneaking into the American camp to liberate the black box of ancient Egyptian code. This specific sequence is a study in character-driven leadership stress. Evelyn isn't a thief by nature, but her passion for the technical integrity of history drives her to take this immense personal risk. She manages to secure the book and returns to the safety of her own camp, where the 3,000-year-old puzzle box, the hardware authentication token we saw earlier, is finally used to unlock the volume. The sound design during this moment is Canalcula to maximize the audience's anticipation. The mechanical click of the key turning in the obsidian lock is a sharp, technical report that echoes through the ruins. This is the moment where the badass of the ancient world meets the curiosity of the modern explorer. For Evelyn, opening this book is a high-performance achievement, but for the world, it is the initiation of a total system failure. As Jonathan and Rick watch, Evelyn begins to translate the hieroglyphs on the first page. This is the execution of the ancient script. The filmmakers used real linguistic expertise to ensure that the ancient Egyptian spoken by Rachel Weisz had a level of technical accuracy that grounded the supernatural event. Evelyn reads the lines that describe the resurrection of the cursed, her voice acting as the acoustic trigger for a biological event that has been frozen for 3 millennia. This isn't just a reading, it is a system-wide command that overrides the security protocols of the afterlife. In the distance, we hear the first sign of a high-frequency market shock, a low, rhythmic buzzing that starts to fill the desert air. It is the arrival of the locusts, a biological denial-of-service attack on the living. The locust sequence is a marvel of 1999 visual engineering. Industrial Light and Magic utilized early particle system technology to create millions of digital locusts that swarm over the camp with high RPM velocity. This creates a state of total operational chaos. The characters are forced to perform an immediate tactical retreat into the tunnels of the ruins, fleeing from a plague that represents the first phase of Imhotep's return to power. The leadership stress on Rick is peak as he tries to herd Evelyn, Jonathan, and the others into the relative safety of the underground chambers. In the darkness of the tomb, the atmosphere is suffocating, filled with the dust of ages and the primal fear of what they have just unleashed. While the locusts consume the surface camp, we shift to the interior of the ruins, where the American team's risk management has completely collapsed. One of their members, the nearsighted Mr. Burns, becomes the first high-value target of the mummy's liquidation strategy. Lost in the tunnels after losing his glasses, a critical loss of his primary sensory asset, he stumbles into the path of the newly awakened Imhotep. This is our first real look at the digital mummy in motion. The technical integrity of this creature is a triumph of CGI and practical puppetry. He is a skeletal, decaying biological asset, missing eyes and a tongue, moving with a jerky, unnatural rhythm that communicates his physical incompleteness. Arnold Vosloo's motion capture performance provides the underlying human data that makes the mummy feel like a sentient threat rather than a mindless monster. The awakening of Imhotep is the film's ultimate market-moving event. He is not just a ghost, he is a biological engine that needs to consume fresh human capital to restore his own physical assets. The batas of his curse is clear: he must take from those who opened the chest to rebuild his own body. Mr. Burns is the first to be audited. The scene where the mummy corners the helpless American is portrayed with a level of horror that was quite bold for a PG-13 adventure. We see the mummy through the blurred perspective of the victim, a high-value visual engineering choice that emphasizes the terrifying reality of the supernatural. When Rick and Evelyn finally arrive, they find a sight that represents a total system failure of their expedition. The mummy is alive, and the first of the Americans has been effectively liquidated of his vital organs. The interaction between Evelyn and the mummy in the tunnels is a critical piece of character analytics. Imhotep sees Evelyn and immediately mistakes her for his lost love, Anxunamun. This creates a psychological synergy between the ancient past and the modern present. For the mummy, Evelyn is the ultimate personal asset, the one he has waited 3,000 years to recover. For Evelyn, she is facing the horrific consequence of her own intellectual curiosity. Rick O'Connell, witnessing this supernatural interaction, provides the tactical response. He doesn't try to reason with the creature, he treats it as a high-volatility threat and uses his technical mastery of the shotgun to deliver a physical audit of the mummy's decaying body. The impact of the rounds on the CGI creature was engineered to show that while Imhotep is powerful, he is still a physical entity that can be disrupted. The arrival of the Medjay at this moment serves as a regulatory intervention. Ardith Bey and his warriors enter the tunnels not to save our heroes, but to contain the disaster. They are the desert's risk management team, and they realize that the catastrophic event they have feared for centuries has finally been triggered. The dialogue between Rick and Ardith Bey provides the narrative strategic outlook. Ardith tells them that they have unleashed a plague upon mankind and that the mummy will not stop until he has recovered his full physical capital. This raises the stakes of the film from a simple treasure hunt to a global fight for survival. The Medjay represent the technical integrity of the ancient guard, and their alliance with Rick is a strategic partnership born of absolute necessity. The escape from Hamunaptra during the Night of the Locusts is a high RPM action sequence that required peak production management. The filmmakers utilized a combination of real fire, practical stunts, and digital enhancements to show the chaos as the various teams flee the city. The Americans, now terrified and managing a significant loss of confidence, are forced to cooperate with Rick to make it out alive. Benny Gabor, in a move that represents his typical low-integrity self-preservation, finds himself cornered by the mummy. In a brilliant piece of behavioral economics, Benny starts praying in every language he knows, eventually hitting on Hebrew, which Imhotep recognizes as the language of the slaves. This earns Benny a temporary reprieve, as the mummy decides to utilize him as a high-value local asset, a guide through the modern world. This partnership between the ancient priest and the modern coward is a fascinating narrative variable that adds to the film's complexity. As our heroes make their way back toward Cairo, the film's narrative pacing moves into a state of constant, high-pressure urgency. They aren't just traveling, they are being hunted by a supernatural force that is growing in power every hour. The production of these travel sequences involved massive logistical coordination, showing the diverse landscapes of Morocco and the period-accurate vehicles of the 1920s. The investment in these visuals provided a high level of cinematic prestige, making the scale of the threat feel global. We see the first signs of the Egyptian plagues hitting the city of Cairo, the water turning to blood, the boils, and the darkness. This is the global ROI of Evelyn's mistake, a total market collapse of the natural order caused by the return of the priest. Let us analyze the lighting physics and the color science of the Cairo sequences during the plagues. The filmmakers used a colder, more desaturated palette to represent the encroaching darkness and the decline of the city's health. This contrasts with the warm, vibrant golds of the early Cairo scenes, visually communicating the shift from prosperity to a high-risk crisis. The sound design also plays a major role, incorporating the low, ominous tones of a world in distress. Every unit of the city's background noise was engineered to sound like a system under pressure, reinforcing the theme of imminent doom. The leadership stress on Evelyn is now internal. She is carrying the weight of the disaster she triggered, and her character growth moves from academic curiosity to a desperate need for redemption. The technical integrity of the mummy's second appearance in Cairo, where he is now partially restored after consuming more of the American team, is a masterclass in hybrid effects. He is now more human, with skin and muscle beginning to cover his digital skeleton. This transition was a significant technical ambition for ILM, requiring complex texture mapping and lighting algorithms to ensure the blend between Arnold Vosloo and the CGI was seamless. The mummy is now a more capable biological asset, able to control the elements and influence the minds of the locals. His goal is the final recovery of Anxunaman, and he views Evelyn as the primary vessel for this resurrection. This creates a high-stakes personal conflict that mirrors the larger global catastrophe. In conclusion of this fourth step, we have successfully decoded the awakening of the priest and the total system failure of the Hamunaptra expedition. We have seen the execution of the ancient code, the arrival of the biological plagues, and the horrific cost of breaking the seal. The mummy is no longer a myth, he is a high-performance supernatural force that has entered the modern market with a vengeance. Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan are now in a state of high-intensity survival, managing their remaining resources to find a way to liquidate the threat they created. The return on your attention capital is now reaching its peak as the adventure moves from the ruins of the desert to the crowded, plague-stricken streets of Cairo. We have framed the horror, the transformation, and the global stakes. In our next step, we will examine the battle for Cairo and the search for the Golden Book. We will analyze the high RPM car chase through the city, the tactical defense of the museum, and the final realization that they must return to Hamunaptra to finish what they started. Get ready, because the city is falling, and the only way to stop the mummy is to dive back into the heart of the curse. Cairo is no longer the vibrant marketplace of intellectual curiosity we saw in the first act, it has become a state of total system-wide collapse. As Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan navigate the streets, they are witnessing the global return on their unauthorized data retrieval at Hamunaptra. The plagues have arrived with a high-frequency impact that the city's infrastructure simply cannot manage. Water turning to blood is not just a visual stunt, it is a fundamental disruption of the city's primary resource, leading to immediate social volatility. The lighting physics of Cairo have shifted into a state of permanent twilight, a visual engineering choice that underscores the looming liquidation of the modern era. Stephen Sommers used this sequence to escalate the stakes from a local adventure to a geopolitical crisis, and the production management required to film these mob scenes in the narrow streets of Marrakesh, which stood in for Cairo, was a marvel of operational efficiency. Thousands of extras were utilized to create the sense of a city being consumed by a psychological contagion, their rhythmic chanting of the priest's name acting as the auditory brand of the apocalypse. The American treasure hunters are now realizing that their portfolio is in a state of terminal decline. Henderson, Daniels, and Stanway are being hunted as high-value biological targets by a partially restored Imhotep. Each of them carries a portion of the mummy's missing physical capital, the organs stored in the canopic jars from the earlier excavation. From a behavioral economics perspective, their initial greed has turned into a massive liability that they cannot hedge against. They are no longer looking for a payout, they are looking for a strategic exit from a market that is closing in on them with supernatural precision. One by one, the mummy finds them, performing a horrific audit of their bodies to recover his own lost assets. The technical integrity of the makeup effects here, combined with Arnold Vosloo's increasingly human appearance, shows the mummy's progress toward full restoration. He is literally rebuilding himself using the flesh of his competitors, a form of hostile takeover that leaves our heroes as the only remaining assets in the field. Beni Gabor, the low-integrity variable we've been tracking, provides the technical intelligence Imhotep needs to navigate the modern city. Beni is the only one who has managed to secure a temporary hedge against the curse by selling out his fellow man, acting as the mummy's translator and liaison. This partnership between the ancient priest and the modern coward is a fascinating narrative variable. Beni represents the ultimate sunk cost of Rick's past, a man who consistently chooses self-preservation over any form of collective synergy. His presence allows the mummy to bypass the city's natural defenses, leading him directly to the hotel where the Americans are hiding. The leadership stress on Rick O'Connell is at an all-time high as he realizes that his old comrade is now the primary facilitator of the world's destruction. The museum sequence serves as our hero's strategic headquarters. Here, the intellectual capital of Evelyn meets the tactical integrity of Ardith Bey and the Medjai. They realize that if the Black Book of the Dead brought the mummy back, then its counter-asset, the Golden Book of Ammonius RA, is the only thing that can perform a total system restore. This realization shifts the narrative from defensive survival to an offensive mission. The technical integrity of the Museum of Antiquities, with its high ceilings and dusty archives, provides a grounded, stable environment for this transition. However, even this fortress is under threat. The production team utilized specialized lighting and practical dust effects to give the museum a sense of ancient weight, reinforcing the idea that they are fighting for the very history of the world. Evelyn's ability to decode the ancient texts under extreme pressure is her primary contribution to the team's survival, proving that knowledge is the most valuable resource in a high-volatility market. Then we hit the high RPM climax of the Cairo segment, the car chase. Rick O'Connell, managing a vintage open-top vehicle, has to outrun a mob of brainwashed locals who have been co-opted by Imhotep's psychological influence. This sequence is a masterpiece of action ROI. The cinematography uses low-angle tracking shots to capture the velocity of the chase through the city's labyrinthine alleys. The sound design is engineered to emphasize the roar of the engine against the rhythmic, terrifying chanting of the mob, creating a sense of leadership stress that the audience can feel in their bones. Rick's ability to navigate this high-volatility scenario with a Tommy gun in one hand and the steering wheel in the other is the ultimate proof of his brand equity as a hero. He is the ultimate competent asset, providing the physical defense that allows Evelyn and Jonathan to protect the map and the hardware key. The loss of the Americans is the final market signal that the curse is reaching its peak. By the time Imhotep confronts our heroes at the museum, he has achieved a high level of physical restoration. He is no longer a ghost in the machine, he is a fully corporeal engine of destruction. His confrontation with Evelyn is a study in predatory character analytics. He views her as the primary vessel for Anxunaemon's resurrection, a critical asset that he must secure to fulfill his 3,000-year-old goal. The visual engineering of the mummy controlling the city's sand to create a massive, screaming face in the sky is the film's ultimate proof of concept for digital effects. This wasn't just a spectacle, it was a demonstration of total mastery over the environment, a signal that the modern world's batas no longer apply. The escape from the museum and the decision to head back to Hamunaptra marks the end of the defensive phase of the story. Rick, Evelyn, Jonathan, and Ardith Bey realize they cannot hold the city, they must return to the source of the infection to apply the cure. This is a high-risk, high-reward move that requires a total allocation of their remaining resources. They are heading back into the heart of the desert, where the mummy's power is absolute, but where the Golden Book is also hidden. The production management of this transition, moving the story back to the Moroccan volcano site, ensured that the film maintained its narrative symmetry. The stakes are now binary, either they find the Book of Ammonius Ra and liquidate the priest, or the world suffers a total system shutdown. In conclusion of this fifth step, we have decoded the battle for Cairo and the shift in the film's strategic outlook. We have seen the liquidation of the rival team, the escalation of the supernatural plagues, and the formation of a final alliance to save the world. The return on your attention capital is now reaching its zenith as our heroes prepare for the ultimate showdown in the city of the dead. They are no longer treasure hunters, they are a high-performance strike team carrying the fate of humanity on their shoulders. The sand is rising, the priest is restored, and we are moving toward the final audit of the curse. We have framed the collapse of Cairo and the tactical pivot to the desert. In our next step, we will examine the final return to Hamunaptra and the race for the Golden Book. We will analyze the high RPM biplane sequence, the crash in the dunes, and the beginning of the final infiltration of the mummy's temple. Get ready, because the city of the dead is about to witness the most expensive conflict in ancient history. The tactical pivot from the falling city of Cairo back to the shifting sands of Hamunaptra represents the final and most dangerous allocation of our heroes' remaining resources. This is not just a journey, it is a high-speed pursuit of a supernatural engine that has now achieved nearly total physical restoration. To reach the city of the dead before Imhotep can complete the resurrection of Anxunaemon, Rick O'Connell has to secure a high-performance aerial asset. This brings us to Winston Havelock, a character who serves as a poignant reminder of the sunk cost of the Great War. Winston is a pilot living in a state of stagnant potential, waiting for one last high-RPM mission to give his life meaning. His biplane, a vintage piece of technical engineering, becomes the primary vehicle for this high-risk infiltration. The production management of this aerial sequence was a marvel of visual engineering, utilizing real vintage aircraft and brave stunt pilots to ground the adventure in a visceral, tangible reality. As the biplane roars over the Sahara, we see the film's narrative pacing hit a state of peak momentum. The leadership stress on Rick is visible as he mans the machine gun, providing the tactical defense for their fragile airborne asset. But Imhotep, now operating with a near-infinite command over the desert's natural resources, launches a high-frequency environmental counterattack. The sand face sequence is the film's ultimate proof of concept for digital fluid dynamics. Industrial light and magic created a wall of sand that transforms into the screaming face of the priest, a visual asset that represents the absolute batas of the mummy's power. This wasn't just a spectacle, it was a demonstration of total market dominance over the physical world. The biplane is literally consumed by the sand, leading to a catastrophic asset loss as Winston performs a final, heroic sacrifice to give the rest of the team a chance to survive. The crash in the dunes is a total system reboot for our protagonists, leaving them stranded on the doorstep of the city with no exit strategy. The walk toward the ruins of Hamunaptra is a study in risk mitigation under extreme duress. Rick, Jonathan, and Artithbay are now a skeleton crew of combat-ready assets, having lost Evelyn to the mummy's capture. This loss of their primary intellectual property, the librarian who can read the ancient texts, is a massive strategic setback. They are now forced to rely on pure tactical integrity to penetrate the mummy's headquarters. The set design for the City of the Dead, as seen in this third act, is engineered to look like a high-stakes fortress. The filmmakers utilized practical shadows and flickering torches to create a high level of atmospheric ROI, making the city feel like a trap that is slowly closing around them. The leadership stress on Artithbay is also significant, as he represents the final remnants of the Medjay regulatory body, fighting a battle that his people have managed for 3,000 years. The infiltration of the temple is a high RPM stealth operation. Rick O'Connell utilized his knowledge of the city's tactical geography to bypass the mummy's guards, who are now brainwashed human assets and resurrected priests. The sound design during this sequence is Canalcula to enhance the tension, using the low, rhythmic chanting of the cultists as a psychological brand of the encroaching darkness. Every unit of the temple's architecture was designed to feel heavy and claustrophobic, reinforcing the idea that they are entering a state of total operational isolation. Rick's resource management is critical here. He is loaded with a diverse portfolio of weaponry, from traditional firearms to explosives, preparing for a final audit of the mummy's physical body. While the strike team is moving through the shadows, we see Evelyn Carnahan being prepared as the ultimate biological sacrifice. Imhotep views her as the necessary capital for the resurrection of his mistress. This creates a high-stakes personal narrative that mirrors the larger global catastrophe. The visual engineering of the ritual chamber, with its obsidian altars and jars of ancient organic matter, provides a high-value historical aesthetic that grounds the supernatural stakes. Arnold Vosloo's performance here is a masterclass in predatory focus. He is so close to his final return on a 3,000-year investment that he can almost feel it. Benny Gabor continues to act as the low-integrity facilitator, his greed and cowardice making him a dangerous variable as he helps the mummy manage the logistics of the sacrifice. The discovery of the Golden Book of Ammonius Ra is the narrative's primary mission-critical objective. While Rick and Ardith engage the mummy's forces, Jonathan is tasked with retrieving this ancient piece of intellectual property. This creates a high RPM division of labor that keeps the pacing of the third act peak. Jonathan, usually a low-performance asset in combat, is forced to step up his operational efficiency, navigating the traps and the guards to secure the golden volume. The book itself, with its intricate technical engineering and solid gold covers, acts as the ultimate counter-asset to the Black Book. It is the only hardware token that can perform a total system restore and liquidate the mummy's supernatural influence. The cinematography uses tight, high-contrast framing to focus on the book's importance, making it the focal point of the final battle. The battle within the temple is a masterclass in action ROI and production management. Stephen Sommers coordinated a complex series of practical stunts, pyrotechnics, and digital enhancements to show the clash between our heroes and the mummy's resurrected army. The mummified priests, created by industrial light and magic, move with a high-velocity, unnatural rhythm that makes them feel like a formidable technical threat. Rick O'Connell's tactical mastery is on full display as he uses his environment to his advantage, turning the temple's own traps and architecture against the enemy. This isn't just a fight, it's an audit of the mummy's military assets, and Rick is the one performing the liquidation. The leadership stress on the entire team is at an all-time high as they realize they are running out of time before the sacrifice is complete. As the ritual begins, the film's color science shifts into a state of intense, supernatural saturation. The air is filled with the blue light of the afterlife, a visual engineering choice that emphasizes the opening of the portal between worlds. This is the moment of ultimate risk exposure for the world. If Evelyn is killed and Enxunaman returns, the global market for life and death will suffer a total collapse. The emotional ROI for the audience is peak as they watch Rick fighting his way through the crowd to reach the altar. The chemistry between Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, even when separated by a supernatural barrier, provides the heart of the sequence, making the stakes feel personal and urgent. They are the only two assets left who can prevent the total liquidation of humanity. Benny's role in this final act is a study in the cost of cowardice. As he helps the mummy, he is also secretly pocketing as much gold as he can carry, showing that his personal behavioral economics never change. He represents the leakage in the system, a man who is so focused on his own immediate payout that he cannot see the looming system failure. His interactions with Jonathan provide a dark, comedic contrast to the high-stakes battle happening around them. The production management required to coordinate these various narrative threads, the fight, the ritual, and the treasure hunt, was a testament to Summers' operational discipline, ensuring that every second of the 124-minute runtime was delivering a high level of narrative ROI. The arrival of the Book of Ammonius RA at the altar is the narrative's final strategic pivot. Jonathan, having finally secured the asset, has to find a way to decode the instructions for the liquidation of the priest. This is where the film's intellectual capital is most vulnerable. Without Evelyn to read the book, they are stuck with a high-value hardware token that they cannot operate. This creates a state of peak leadership stress as the mummy's ritual reaches its final phase. The tension is calculated to make the audience feel the pressure of the deadline, as the survival of the team and the world hangs on a single line of ancient code. In conclusion of this sixth step, we have successfully decoded the return to the city of the dead and the final infiltration of the mummy's temple. We have seen the high RPM aerial battle, the heroic sacrifice of Winston Havelock, and the tactical push toward the heart of the ruins. The stakes are now binary: find the code, read the book, and liquidate the mummy, or witness the total system shutdown of the world. The return on your attention capital is now guaranteed as we prepare for the final audit of the curse and the ultimate resolution of our $80 million adventure. We have framed the final infiltration and the race for the Golden Book. In our next step, we will examine the final battle between Rick O'Connell and the resurrected mummies. We will analyze the high RPM sword fight, the reading of the Golden Book, and the final liquidation of Imhotep. Get ready, because the city is falling, the gold is being recovered, and the mummy is about to find out that death is truly only the beginning. The air inside the ritual chamber of Hamunaptra is thick with the blue, supernatural glow of the afterlife, a visual engineering choice that signals a total system override of the natural world. We have reached the climax of our $80 million enterprise, and the leadership stress on Rick O'Connell is at an absolute peak. Evelyn is strapped to the altar, her life force positioned as the primary capital for the resurrection of Anxu-Naaman. Rick, Ardith Bey, and Jonathan have successfully infiltrated the inner sanctum, but they are facing a high-volatility market of resurrected mummies and brainwashed cultists. This is the moment where tactical integrity meets ancient magic. Rick isn't just fighting for survival anymore, he is fighting to prevent a catastrophic asset loss of the human soul. The final battle begins with a high RPM display of combat efficiency. Stephen Summers used a combination of practical stunts and high-speed cinematography to show the clash between Rick and the mummy's elite guard. Unlike the decaying mummies we saw earlier, these are the priest's personal enforcers, fully fleshed-out digital assets created by industrial light and magic. They move with an unnatural, high-velocity rhythm that provides a significant action ROI. Rick O'Connell, utilizing a diverse portfolio of vintage weaponry, manages to perform a tactical sweep of the floor, his movements a masterclass in operational discipline. He is the ultimate competent asset, moving through the chaos with a single-minded focus on reaching the altar. While Rick provides the physical defense, Jonathan and Ardith are tasked with the recovery and execution of the Golden Book of Ammonius RA. This is the film's critical piece of hardware, the only asset capable of performing a total system restore. However, they hit a massive barrier to entry: neither of them can read the ancient code. This creates a state of peak leadership stress, as Evelyn is the only one with the intellectual capital to operate the book. In a brilliant piece of character-driven visual engineering, Rick manages to free Evelyn just as the ritual reaches its final phase. The chemistry between them remains the emotional anchor of the scene, even in the middle of a supernatural meltdown. Their synergy is what drives the team forward. Evelyn takes possession of the Golden Book, and the narrative shifts from tactical combat to high-stakes data retrieval. As she begins to recite the incantations, the sound design is calculated to emphasize the power of the ancient words. Each syllable acts as a command line, rewriting the batas of Imhotep's existence. This is the moment of ultimate risk management for the mummy. He realizes that his 3,000-year investment is about to be liquidated. Arnold Vosloo's performance during this sequence is a masterclass in transition. We see the shift from arrogant dominance to primal fear as he realizes the Golden Book is stripping away his supernatural assets. The visual engineering of the spirit chariot arriving to take Imhotep's soul is one of the film's most iconic shots. Industrial light and magic utilized complex lighting and particle effects to show the physical extraction of the mummy's power. Imhotep is transformed back into a mortal man, his digital rot returning as he is rendered vulnerable to physical harm. Rick O'Connell doesn't miss the opportunity for a final audit. In a high RPM closing move, Rick delivers the killing blow, a physical liquidation that sends Imhotep back into the pool of souls. The technical integrity of the mummy's final lines, "Death is only the beginning," serves as a chilling reminder that in the world of Hamunaptra, no asset is ever truly gone. But the system failure isn't over. As Imhotep is liquidated, the city of Hamunaptra itself begins to undergo a total structural collapse. This is the narrative's final catastrophic event, a massive asset loss of the ancient city. The production team used elaborate miniatures and practical pyrotechnics to show the city of the dead being reclaimed by the sand. From a production management standpoint, this was a massive logistical undertaking, requiring the coordination of real-world physics with digital cleanup. The leadership stress on our heroes is now focused on the escape. They have the gold, they have the books, but they have no time. Benny Gabor, the low-integrity variable we have tracked through the whole story, finally meets his own personal liquidation. His greed becomes his ultimate liability. As he tries to carry one last bag of treasure, he accidentally triggers a closing door, trapping himself inside the ruins with a swarm of flesh-eating scarabs. This is the perfect behavioral economics payoff. His short-term focus on profit led to a total loss of his life. Benny's death represents the final closing of the Hamunaptra market. The ruins consume him along with the gold, leaving only the lessons of his poor risk management behind. The escape from the collapsing temple is a high RPM race against the clock. Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan manage to perform a strategic exit, reaching the surface just as the city is swallowed by the desert. This sequence provides a final, breathtaking piece of visual ROI, as the massive set design we saw in the earlier acts is literally erased from the map. The cinematography uses wide-angle shots to show the indifferent power of the Sahara, reinforcing the idea that some secrets are meant to stay buried. Our heroes are left on the dunes, managing a state of shock but also a profound sense of accomplishment. As the dust settles, we see the final return on their investment. Jonathan has managed to secure a few bags of gold from the saddle of a camel, ensuring that their expedition isn't a total financial loss. But more importantly, the emotional ROI is solidified as Rick and Evelyn finally share a moment of genuine connection. Their strategic partnership has evolved into a personal bond, a durable asset that will carry them into the next chapter of their lives. Ardith Bay and the Medjay ride off into the sunset, their mission of risk management finally complete. They have protected the world from a global system failure, and the batasse of the desert is restored. In conclusion of this seventh step, we have decoded the final battle and the liquidation of the priest. We have seen the execution of the Golden Code, the destruction of the City of the Dead, and the final payoff of our characters' arcs. The return on your attention capital is now at its maximum as the 99-minute journey comes to its high-octane resolution. The Mummy stands as a masterclass in art-tech capital harmony, a film that used cutting-edge technology to tell a classic story of adventure and redemption. We have framed the climax and the resolution. But our 13-step review is far from over. In the coming steps, we will perform a deep-dive audit of the film's specific technical departments. We will look at the production budget and marketing ROI, the sound design architecture, and the visual engineering that made The Mummy such a terrifying cinematic asset. Get ready, because we are moving from the story to the science, performing a total financial autopsy on this Universal Pictures classic. To truly decode the success of The Mummy, 1999, we have to perform a cold, clinical audit of the production budget and the marketing return on investment. This was an $80 million high-stakes enterprise for Universal Pictures. In the late 90s, $80 million was a significant capital exposure, especially for a project without an established A-list superstar. We must analyze the strategic allocation of this capital. The studio didn't just spend money, they invested it into high-value assets like the practical locations in Morocco and the cutting-edge visual engineering of Industrial Light and Magic. Universal was betting on the brand equity of the Mummy title and the promise of a high RPM summer spectacle. This was a classic case of managing complexity risk, where the producers had to balance the ballooning costs of a desert shoot with the technical demands of a CGI-heavy third act. Let us examine the workforce economics of the production. Filming in Morocco allowed the studio to leverage a massive, skilled labor asset for the construction of the city of Hamunaptra. By building the city within a dormant volcano, the production management team created a tangible reality that boosted the film's technical integrity. Every dollar spent on stone, plaster, and sand-swept set design was a micro-investment in the film's atmospheric ROI. The leadership stress on director Stephen Sommers was immense, as he had to ensure that the production didn't succumb to the capital drain of a difficult desert environment. Despite sandstorms and logistical delays, the shoot remained relatively on schedule, a testament to the operational efficiency of the crew. The marketing strategy for The Mummy was a masterclass in CPM-driven hype and demographic targeting. Universal realized early on that they had a market disruptor on their hands. They utilized a high-frequency media buy strategy, saturating youth-oriented television and early internet platforms with trailers that focused on the high RPM action and the sand-face visual effect. This was a form of brand positioning designed to separate the film from the classic, slower-paced horror movies of the past. The studio calculated that by positioning the film as a high-adventure epic, they could capture a broad global audience, from the Indiana Jones fans to the younger generation of tech-savvy moviegoers. The investment in marketing was estimated at nearly $30 million, bringing the total capital risk to over $100 million before a single ticket was sold. The return on investment was immediate and massive. The Mummy performed a total hostile takeover of the box office on its opening weekend, earning over $43 million domestically. This was a stunning validation of the studio's financial strategy. From a behavioral economics perspective, the audience responded to the film's fun-to-value ratio. It wasn't just a movie, it was a high-performance theme park ride for the senses. The global ROI was even more impressive, with the film eventually grossing over $415 million worldwide. This represents a return of over 5 times the initial production budget, a staggering success that solidified The Mummy as a core asset in Universal's portfolio. We must also analyze the long-tail value of this investment. The success of the 1999 film didn't just end at the box office, it created a multi-billion-dollar franchise, including sequels, spin-offs, and theme park attractions. The initial $80 million capital risk acted as the seed money for an entire cinematic ecosystem. This is the ultimate example of art-tech capital harmony, where a well-executed creative vision, supported by the right technology and financial management, creates a durable brand that continues to pay dividends for decades. The Mummy proved that a well-crafted adventure, backed by a high RPM marketing campaign, is a universal language that can dominate any global market. In conclusion of this 8th step, we have decoded the financial machinery behind the film's success. We have seen how Universal managed its capital exposure, leveraged its production assets, and executed a marketing strategy that maximized its return on investment. The $80 million gamble paid off in a way that forever changed the landscape of the summer blockbuster. We have moved from the story of the priest to the ledger of the studio, performing a total financial autopsy on this 1999 classic. We have framed the budget and the marketing ROI. In our next step, we will examine the filmmaking technology and innovation. We will perform a technical audit of the camera systems, the lighting physics, and the specific digital breakthroughs that allowed industrial light and magic to bring Imhotep to life. Get ready, because we are diving deep into the engine of the film's visual magic, where the science of the shot meets the art of the creature. To truly decode the visual mastery of The Mummy, we must perform a deep-dive technical audit of the filmmaking technology and innovation that defined this $80 million enterprise. In 1999, the industry was in a state of high RPM transition between practical tradition and digital revolution. Director Stephen Sommers and cinematographer Adrian Biddle opted to shoot on 35mm film using Panavision cameras and Primo lenses. This was a strategic allocation of technical resources because film offered a specific organic texture and a wide dynamic range that early digital sensors simply could not replicate. The lighting physics of the Egyptian desert were managed with surgical precision. To capture the searing heat of the Sahara, the crew utilized specialized filters and high-performance tungsten lighting to balance the harsh shadows. This created a high-definition cinematic prestige that made the world of Hamunaptra feel like a premium historical asset rather than a studio-bound fantasy. The most significant technological ambition of the project was the creation of the Mummy itself. This was a critical mission for Industrial Light and Magic. They had to solve a complex visual engineering problem: how to render a creature that was a biological impossibility, a skeletal priest with translucent skin and missing muscle groups. To achieve this, the team decoded the mechanics of the human body using a process called digital rotoscoping and skeletal mapping. They took the motion capture data from Arnold Vosloo and layered it with procedural digital decay. This was a form of hybrid visual engineering that ensured the Mummy's movements felt biologically accurate even when he was a digital rot. The result was a high RPM creature that moved with a terrifying fluid velocity, providing a massive return on investment for the audience's suspension of disbelief. The cinematography of The Mummy represents a massive investment in the visual brand of the 1920s adventure genre. Adrian Biddle, a high-performance asset in his own right, utilized 35mm Kodak film stock to capture the specific golden hour physics of the Moroccan desert. The decision to shoot in Morocco rather than Egypt was not just a logistical pivot, it was a strategic move to secure the vast, undisturbed vistas required for the film's technical integrity. The lighting rigs used in the Sahara were absolute behemoths, involving massive silk diffusers and silver reflectors to manage the high contrast ratio between the blinding sand and the deep shadows of the tombs. This visual engineering ensured that the faces of Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz remained clear and expressive even in the middle of a high-intensity action sequence. Let us analyze the innovation in fluid dynamics that powered the iconic sandstorm sequence. In 1999, rendering millions of individual particles was a massive capital drain on a studio's computing power. Industrial Light and Magic developed new algorithms to manage the behavioral physics of the sand, allowing it to interact with the environment and the characters in real time. This wasn't just a static effect, it was a high-performance simulation that allowed the sand to form into a screaming face. This visual asset acted as the film's primary marketing hook, proving that digital technology could now create nightmares that were previously impossible to film. The leadership stress on the tech team was peak as they had to ensure that the lighting of the digital sand matched the practical Moroccan sun with near-perfect technical integrity. We must also audit the practical creature effects managed by Nick Dudman's Creature Shop. While the digital mummy captured the headlines, the film's technical depth was built on a foundation of practical engineering. The flesh-eating scarabs were a mix of mechanical models and digital overlays, providing a tangible horror ROI that made the audience's skin crawl. The mummified priests in the final act were a masterclass in makeup physics, utilizing thin prosthetics and complex layering to give the actors a desiccated, ancient appearance. This synergy between the practical and the digital is the ultimate batasse of the film's success. Summers understood that if you ground the digital rot in a physical reality, you maximize the audience's emotional buy-in. This was a form of visual risk management that ensured the film would not age as quickly as its contemporaries. The set design of Hamunaptra, the City of the Dead, was a significant piece of operational infrastructure. Built within a real volcanic crater near Erfoud, the city was a massive physical asset that occupied a footprint larger than most studio backlots. The production management team utilized hundreds of local laborers to build the temple walls, the statues of Anubis, and the intricate tunnel systems. This provided a level of architectural prestige that digital matte paintings could never achieve. The mirrors used to light the interior of the tomb were not just a clever plot point, they were a practical piece of filmmaking technology used to bounce light into the deepest corners of the set, creating a unique, golden glow that became the film's visual brand. The sound design architecture was also a masterpiece of auditory engineering. The team utilized high-fidelity multi-track recording to create the specific brand of the mummy's voice. They blended Arnold Vosloo's vocal performance with the growls of lions and the sounds of rushing wind to create a supernatural resonance. This was a form of auditory branding that made Imhotep sound like an ancient force of nature. Every strike of a sword and every explosion of a sand trap was engineered to have a high RPM impact, making the 1820s adventure feel visceral and modern. The sound design acted as a psychological trigger for the audience, reinforcing the physical weight of the digital effects and ensuring that the final return on the theater experience was peak. Jerry Goldsmith's orchestral score is the film's emotional capital. Recorded with an 80-piece orchestra, the score utilizes traditional Egyptian scales and modern action rhythms to drive the narrative's momentum. Goldsmith, a master of thematic ROI, created a leitmotif for the mummy that is both regal and terrifying, a sonic representation of Imhotep's lost power. The music doesn't just sit in the background, it is a primary driver of the film's high RPM energy, providing a sense of scale and adventure that supports the visual engineering. The investment in a composer of Goldsmith's caliber was a form of brand protection for Universal, ensuring that the film felt like a premium event. In the late 90s, the digital intermediate was not yet the industry standard, meaning that much of the film's color science was achieved through practical chemistry and optical printing. The technical integrity of the film's color timing, emphasizing the warm ambers and deep desert oranges, was a result of a meticulous collaboration between Adrian Biddle and the lab technicians. They had to ensure that the transition between the practical Moroccan sunlight and the blue-tinged supernatural interiors was seamless. This required a high degree of technical precision, as any inconsistency would have disrupted the audience's immersion. This was the batasse of the analog era, getting it right in the camera and the lab, before the pixels ever hit the screen. The filmmaking technology of The Mummy also extended to the aerial cinematography. Utilizing vintage-style biplanes and modern helicopter mounts, the crew captured the sweep of the Nile and the scale of the Sahara. These shots provided a massive production value ROI, placing the characters within a vast, hostile landscape that emphasized their vulnerability. The leadership stress on the flight crew during the sandstorm chase was intense, as they had to navigate the Moroccan winds while keeping the camera stabilized. This was high RPM filmmaking in its purest form, blending dangerous practical stunts with sophisticated camera tech. Post-production was a massive operation involving over 400 visual effects shots. For 1999, this was a high-frequency workload that pushed ILM to its limits. The editors had to manage the narrative pacing with surgical precision, ensuring that the transition between live-action and digital assets felt natural. The Crow software developed by ILM for Star Wars was repurposed here to manage the movements of the mummified armies, providing a technical efficiency that allowed for massive, epic battles on a studio budget. This was a form of technology transfer that maximized the return on Universal's capital investment. Let us consider the innovation in the Book of the Dead and the Book of Ammonius RA as practical props. These were not just pieces of paper, they were complex pieces of mechanical engineering with functional locks and heavy obsidian and gold casings. These props provided a tangible weight to the narrative, acting as the hardware tokens that unlocked the curse. The investment in these high-value props ensured that when Rachel Weisz touched the books, the audience felt the historical weight and the technical reality of the ancient world. This is the hallmark of Summers' management style. Every detail, no matter how small, must contribute to the overall art-tech capital harmony. The technical audit of the biplane crash in the third act reveals a combination of practical wreckage and digital enhancement. The production management team used real aircraft shells for the impact shots, while ILM added the swirling sand and the supernatural face. This hybrid model of effects allowed for a high RPM action sequence that felt physically dangerous while maintaining a level of supernatural fantasy. The cinematography during the crash utilized multiple high-speed camera units to capture the destruction from every angle, providing a wealth of data for the editors to work with. This was a classic 1990s blockbuster move, blow it up for real whenever possible. Finally, we must examine the color science of the final battle in the ritual chamber. The use of deep blue filters and phosphorescent lighting created a supernatural environment that contrasted sharply with the warm desert exterior. This was a deliberate piece of visual engineering designed to show the thinness of the barrier between life and death. The technical integrity of this sequence relied on the interaction between the practical blue light and the digital spirits of the afterlife. This harmony of light and shadow provided the ultimate visual ROI for the film's climax, ensuring that the final liquidation of the priest was as beautiful as it was terrifying. The Mummy remains a definitive case study in how to manage a high RPM production during a period of intense technological disruption. Stephen Sommers and his team decoded the challenge of rebooting a legacy brand by investing in the highest quality technical assets available. From the Panavision lenses to the ILM servers, every unit of the production was engineered to deliver a maximum return on the audience's attention capital. This wasn't just a movie, it was a demonstration of how art, tech, and capital can work in perfect harmony to create a cinematic landmark. The science of the shot and the art of the creature combined to prove that death is truly only the beginning for a high-value film asset. We have framed the cinematography, the creature effects, and the auditory branding that made this 1999 epic a state-of-the-art success. The technical engine of the film was built on a foundation of 35mm film and high-performance digital innovation, a balance that continues to provide a visual ROI decades later. The production management and the leadership on the set ensured that even in the middle of a desert volcano, the technical integrity of the project remained absolute. This concludes our technical audit of the machinery behind the magic. Moving from the high RPM visual engineering to the psychological architecture of the players, we perform a deep dive audit of the character psychology and behavioral economics that drive the Mummy. To truly decode the lasting appeal of this 1999 enterprise, we have to look past the digital rot and analyze the internal management of each asset on the screen. The film is not just a race for gold, it is a high-stakes study in risk management, motivation, and the behavioral variables that lead to either total system success or catastrophic liquidation. Every character operates within their own incentive structure, managing their personal capital and emotional return on investment in a world where the ancient batasse of the desert is constantly clashing with modern 1920s ambition. Let us start our psychological audit with Rick O'Connell, the film's blue-chip action asset. Rick is a study in tactical stoicism and operational logic. When we first meet him in the French Foreign Legion, he is an asset that has already experienced a massive system crash. He has seen the worst of war and the supernatural, leading to a weary, high-performance survival instinct. His bravery is not a form of reckless emotional spending, it is a calculated response to a high-volatility environment. Brendan Fraser's performance provides the necessary brand equity for this mindset, blending a rugged physicality with a sense of self-aware risk assessment. Rick understands that in the desert, your primary asset is your technical integrity, the ability to keep your weapon clean and your head down. He is motivated by a simple, honest return on investment, survival and, eventually, the protection of the people he has allowed into his personal portfolio. He is the ultimate competent hero because he recognizes that fear is a cost he cannot afford to pay. Evelyn Carnahan represents the film's intellectual property and the primary engine of its curiosity. Her psychology is driven by a high-performance academic hunger. She is not just a librarian, she is a data processor with a profound respect for the technical integrity of the past. Her behavioral economics are fascinated by the recovery of lost knowledge, which she views as the ultimate return on investment for her career. However, this passion creates a significant risk exposure. Evelyn's desire to uncover the secrets of Hamunaptra is what triggers the unauthorized data retrieval that awakens the priest. Her character arc is a journey of managing a confidence deficit, moving from an underappreciated museum employee to a strategic partner who can face down a supernatural threat. Her academic drive is her greatest strength, but it is also the variable that causes the initial system failure of the expedition. She learns that in the desert, the badass of the book must be balanced with the badass of the sword. Then we have Jonathan Carnahan, who serves as the film's primary social liability and source of comedic return on investment. Jonathan's psychology is a masterclass in short-term payout over long-term risk management. He is a man who operates in a state of permanent capital drain, always looking for a quick fix or a stolen asset to fund his lifestyle. He provides a fascinating variable in the team's portfolio because his behavior is unpredictable and often driven by low-integrity motives like greed and vanity. Yet, he also possesses a specific kind of resourcefulness that proves to be a valuable asset in a crisis. Jonathan represents the chaotic element of the 1920s market, the one who triggers the event but lacks the operational discipline to manage the fallout. His interaction with the higher integrity characters like Rick and Evelyn creates a balanced narrative portfolio, ensuring the film never becomes too dark or too dry. He is the reminder that even in a high-stakes adventure, there is room for a bit of opportunistic fun. We must also perform an audit of the film's antagonist, Imhotep. His behavior is a clinical study in the sunk cost fallacy. He has spent 3,000 years in a state of eternal suffering, all to recoup a single emotional asset, his lost love, Anxunamun. Imhotep is a predatory force with a near-infinite focus. He does not view the modern world as a marketplace to be understood, but as a resource to be harvested for his own physical restoration. His psychology is driven by an ancient, binary logic: restore the priestess and liquidate anyone who stands in the way. He is an engine of vengeance with no concept of risk management or collateral damage. For Imhotep, the return on his investment is not measured in gold or power, but in the recovery of the past. This makes him a uniquely dangerous asset, as he cannot be reasoned with or bought. He can only be liquidated through a total system restore. He is the ultimate market disruptor, a force that ignores the modern rules of engagement to fulfill an ancient contract. Benny Gabor is the ultimate low-integrity variable, a character whose behavioral economics are governed entirely by the instinct for self-preservation. Benny is the leaking valve in every system he joins. Whether he is serving in the Foreign Legion or working for the Mummy, he is always looking for a way to hedge his bets. The scene where he prays in multiple languages while facing Imhotep is a brilliant piece of character analytics. He is literally trying to diversify his spiritual portfolio to avoid immediate liquidation. Benny represents the danger of a partner without a code, the one who will sell out the entire enterprise for a temporary reprieve. His willingness to facilitate the Mummy's hostile takeover of Cairo is a reminder that in a high-volatility market, the most dangerous risk often comes from within the team. He is the personification of bad faith, a sunk cost that Rick eventually has to write off for good. The American treasure hunters provide a study in group psychology and the greed-based market. They are a high-capital team that completely ignores the risk signals provided by the Medjai and the environment. Their behavioral economics are driven by the prospect of an immediate, massive payout, leading them to disregard the technical integrity of the site they are excavating. They view Hamunaptra as a simple resource extraction project, lacking the intellectual capital of Evelyn or the tactical respect of Rick. This overleveraged confidence is what leads to their eventual liquidation. They are the cautionary tale of the film, the ones who enter a high-risk market without a clear exit strategy or a proper understanding of the laws that govern it. They treat history like a commodity, and in return, history audits their lives and finds them wanting. Ardith Bey and the Medjai act as the film's regulatory body and long-term risk management team. Their psychology is one of generational stoicism and absolute technical integrity. They have managed the Imhotep asset for 3 millennia, operating with a single-minded goal of containment. Ardith Bey brings a sense of regal leadership stress to the role, a man carrying the weight of an ancient contract. He does not seek profit or fame, he seeks to maintain the stability of the global market by keeping the curse buried. His strategic partnership with Rick O'Connell is a fascinating merger of two different brands of competence, the modern soldier and the ancient guardian, working together to perform a total system restore for the world. He is the guardian of the desert's potasse, a reminder that some assets are meant to stay frozen in the sand forever. The relationship between Rick and Evelyn is the film's emotional capital, a synergy that provides the highest return on investment for the audience. From a behavioral perspective, they are a balanced portfolio. Rick provides the physical defense and tactical logic, while Evelyn provides the intellectual data and the narrative direction. Their bond is built on a series of successful high-stakes trades, moving from a transaction of convenience in the Cairo prison to a deep, personal partnership in the Temple of Hamunaptra. This synergy is what allows them to survive where the more fragmented, greed-driven teams fail. They represent the idea that the most durable asset in a crisis is a team built on mutual respect and complementary skill sets. Their love is not just a subplot, it is the stabilizing force that keeps the narrative engine from overheating. Imagine the behavioral economics of the Cairo mob. When Imhotep uses his psychological influence to co-opt the locals, he is performing a mass-scale hostile takeover of the city's human capital. The mob does not have an individual agency, they become a high RPM extension of the mummy's will. This represents a total system failure of the city's social order, as the people are turned into a biological defense system for the priest. The sound of their rhythmic chanting becomes the auditory brand of this psychological contagion, a signal that the local market has been completely compromised by an external force. This creates a state of intense leadership stress for our heroes as they try to navigate a city where every person has become a potential liability. It is a chilling look at how easily a population can be liquidated of its free will. The warden represents the low-end, corrupt side of the 1920s infrastructure. His psychology is one of pure, unfiltered greed without any accompanying technical skill. He is the ultimate example of a bad investment. He provides no value to the team but demands a high percentage of the payout. His liquidation in the tunnels of Hamunaptra is a stark reminder of the film's inherent laws. If you enter the city of the dead with nothing but greed, the ruins will find you. He acts as a foil to Jonathan, showing that while Jonathan is a liability, he at least has a sense of loyalty to his family, whereas the warden is a purely parasitic asset. His end is a warning that in the city of the dead, your internal balance sheet is the only thing that matters. Finally, we must consider the psychology of sacrifice. Both Anxunaman in the prologue and Winston Havelock in the third act perform acts of total asset liquidation for a greater cause. Anxunaman's suicide is a bet on a future resurrection, a high-risk move driven by forbidden love. Winston's crash in the biplane is a heroic sacrifice, a move made by a man who had already written off his life and wanted his final act to have a high RPM impact. These moments of total commitment provide the film with its moral and emotional weight, showing that in the enterprise of life, some things are worth more than survival. These sacrifices are the ultimate market moves, the ones that change the trajectory of the entire narrative and ensure that the final return on the story is peak. They prove that true courage is the ability to write yourself off for the survival of the portfolio. In this psychological audit of the mummy, we have decoded the internal engines that drive the adventure. We have seen how risk-taking, academic drive, greed, and obsession interact to create a high-volatility narrative that resonates with the audience's own behavioral triggers. The film is a masterclass in how different psychological profiles can be merged into a single, high-performance story that delivers a massive return on investment. We have moved from the filmmaker's camera to the character's mind, performing a total psychological audit of this Universal Pictures classic. The minds of these characters are as complex as the traps of Hamunaptra, and understanding their management style is the key to unlocking the film's lasting brand equity. We now move our analytical focus from the internal management of the characters to the external forces of the global marketplace as we perform a deep dive audit of the marketing strategy and audience analytics for The Mummy. To truly decode the commercial success of this $80 million enterprise, we must understand how Universal Pictures positioned this asset to capture a dominant market share in the summer of 1999. This was a masterclass in high RPM promotion and strategic risk management. The studio had a high-volatility product on its hands, a remake of a horror classic that was being rebranded as a swashbuckling adventure. This required a sophisticated allocation of marketing capital to ensure that the audience understood the new brand identity. The marketing team had to manage the complexity risk of shifting the public perception from a slow-paced black-and-white thriller to a kinetic high-definition spectacle. The initial capital exposure for the marketing campaign was estimated at nearly $30 million. This was a significant reinvestment in the film's potential, designed to mitigate the risk of being buried by the year's other massive market mover, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Universal's analysts realized that they could not compete with the sheer cultural gravity of Star Wars on a one-to-one basis, so they utilized a strategy of product differentiation. While Star Wars was being marketed as a grand space opera, The Mummy was positioned as a fun, accessible, and visceral ride. This was a classic piece of competitive market analysis. They identified a gap in the market for a classic-style adventure and allocated their media buy capital to saturate that specific niche. By the time the film reached its opening weekend, the brand recognition was so high that it achieved a near-perfect product-market fit. Let us examine the primary viral hook of the campaign, the screaming sand face. In 1999, this was a masterpiece of visual branding. The marketing team realized that this specific piece of visual engineering from Industrial Light and Magic was their most valuable promotional asset. They utilized it in every trailer, poster, and television spot, turning a few seconds of digital fluid dynamics into a global psychological brand. This hook acted as a high-frequency signal to the audience that this was not their grandfather's mummy. It promised a level of technical innovation that justified the ticket price. The return on investment for this specific piece of marketing was exponential, as it became the defining image of the 1999 summer season. It proved that a single, well-executed technical asset can drive an entire global campaign. The demographic targeting for The Mummy was a study in broad-spectrum audience analytics. The marketing team utilized a three-tiered approach to maximize their initial revenue. The first tier was the nostalgia market, older viewers who remembered the original Boris Karloff films. For this group, the marketing emphasized the legacy of the title and the respect for the technical integrity of the source material. The second tier was the high RPM action crowd, primarily young males who were drawn to the tactical combat and the high-stakes thrills. The third and perhaps most critical tier was the family and female demographic, attracted by the chemistry between Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. This diversification of the audience portfolio ensured that the film had a stable base of capital across multiple segments, protecting the studio from a narrow focus failure. We must also analyze the CPM logic behind the media buy strategy. Universal didn't just buy ads, they bought moments of high-frequency engagement. They allocated a significant portion of their budget toward high-impact television events like the Super Bowl and season finales of popular shows, where the cost per thousand viewers was high but the return on attention capital was guaranteed. This was a form of leadership stress for the marketing executives, as they had to justify these massive spends before the first box office data was available. However, they utilized early tracking data and focus group analytics to refine their messaging. They found that the humor was a major selling point, so they pivoted their television spots to feature more of the interaction between Rick and Jonathan, a move that increased the film's likability ROI. The global ROI strategy for The Mummy was equally sophisticated. Universal understood that an action-adventure film has a higher degree of transnational portability than a comedy or a heavy drama. They calculated that the visual language of the desert and the universal theme of the underdog would translate with high technical integrity across international borders. They launched a synchronized global campaign, ensuring that the film opened in major markets like London, Tokyo, and Mexico City within a tight window of the domestic release. This prevented the capital drain of international piracy and ensured that the brand's momentum remained high RPM worldwide. The result was a stunning international gross of over $260 million, proving that ancient Egyptian lore combined with modern Hollywood tech is a high-yield global commodity. The tagline, "Death is only the beginning," was a masterstroke of auditory and visual branding. It acted as a psychological contract with the audience, promising a narrative that would defy the natural batasse of life and death. This was not just a catchy phrase, it was a form of intellectual property that defined the film's supernatural brand equity. It was used in print, radio, and digital banners, creating a consistent narrative thread that tied the entire $60 million marketing enterprise together. From an analytical perspective, this tagline provided a high level of brand recall, ensuring that even weeks after seeing a trailer, the audience could still decode the primary value proposition of the film. Let us consider the role of the product tie-ins and the promotional partnerships. Universal entered into strategic alliances with high-performance brands like Burger King and various toy manufacturers to create a surrounding ecosystem for the film. This was a form of vertical integration that increased the film's market reach without increasing the direct capital expenditure of the studio. These partnerships acted as secondary marketing engines, driving the brand into the daily lives of their target demographics. While some critics view this as overcommercialization, from a financial perspective, it is a brilliant way to hedge the risk of the production. These tie-ins ensure that the film becomes a cultural asset that exists beyond the four walls of the theater, increasing its long-tail value and its eventual return on investment. We must also audit the digital marketing of 1999. While the internet was still in its early stages of market penetration, Universal created a high-definition website for The Mummy that offered interactive maps of Hamunaptra and behind-the-scenes data on the digital creature effects. This was an early form of digital ROI, engaging the tech-savvy segment of the audience and encouraging them to become brand ambassadors in the early online communities. This technical integrity in their web presence showed that the studio understood the emerging market for digital content, and it provided a wealth of analytical data on what specific parts of the film were generating the most interest. The website was an auxiliary asset that supported the primary marketing machine, providing a depth of immersion that traditional trailers could not match. The leadership on the marketing team had to manage the Star Wars pressure throughout the entire launch cycle. This required a state of constant operational discipline. They monitored the daily market signals and adjusted their spending in real time. When they saw that the audience was responding positively to the character of Evelyn, they increased her presence in the print ads, a form of tactical pivot that maximized the film's emotional capital. This responsiveness to audience analytics is what allowed The Mummy to maintain its high RPM velocity even in a crowded marketplace. They didn't just set a plan and forget it, they managed the marketing like a high-volatility trading floor, always looking for the best return on their promotional dollar. The success of the marketing campaign was validated on May 7, 1999, when the film opened to $43 million in the United States. This was a total hostile takeover of the weekend box office. The analytics showed that the audience was diverse, satisfied, and eager for more. The word-of-mouth ROI was peak, as viewers praised the film's mix of humor and horror. This organic growth is the ultimate goal of any marketing enterprise, where the audience itself becomes the primary driver of the brand's capital. The film's durability at the box office over the following weeks proved that the marketing had not just created a flash in the pan, but a durable asset with a long-term future in the global market. From a behavioral economics perspective, the marketing of The Mummy leveraged the loss aversion of the audience. By positioning the film as a unique, one-of-a-kind summer event, they made the audience feel that missing it would be a missed opportunity for a high-value experience. They created a sense of scarcity capital around the visual effects, making it clear that this was the only place you could see the screaming sand face. This psychological pressure is what drives the high RPM conversion of casual viewers into ticket buyers. It is a study in how to manipulate the perceived value of a cinematic asset to ensure a maximum return on the initial investment. The global box office of over $400 million was the final audit of the film's marketing success. It proved that the $80 million production budget and the $30 million promotional spend were a perfectly calculable capital exposure. The film achieved a state-of-art tech capital harmony that most studio projects only dream of. It showed that Universal could successfully decode the desires of the global audience and deliver a product that met those needs with technical integrity and high-definition flair. The Mummy wasn't just a movie, it was a commercial machine that performed at peak efficiency, turning a legacy brand into a multi-billion-dollar modern franchise. In conclusion of this 11th step, we have decoded the financial and psychological machinery of the film's global launch. We have seen how Universal managed its marketing capital, leveraged its visual hooks, and utilized demographic targeting to achieve a state of market dominance. The marketing strategy was the engine that drove the film toward its massive return on investment, ensuring that The Ancient Priest's return was the most profitable event of 1999. We have moved from the desert and the lab to the boardroom and the box office, performing a total commercial autopsy on this high RPM success story. We have framed the marketing strategy and the audience analytics. In our next step, we will examine the critical reception and awards impact. We will analyze how the professional critics decoded the film's blend of genres and how the industry recognized the technical innovation of Stephen Sommers and his team. Get ready, because we are moving into the final audit of the film's prestige, looking at how it earned its place in the history of the summer blockbuster. We now move into the penultimate phase of our audit as we examine the critical reception and awards impact of The Mummy. To truly decode the legacy of this $80 million enterprise, we must analyze how the film's blend of high RPM action and supernatural horror was received by the professional gatekeepers of cinematic prestige. In 1999, the critical landscape was in a state of high-frequency transition. The gatekeepers were managing a portfolio that included high-concept dramas and the emerging wave of digital blockbusters. The Mummy entered this market as a high-volatility asset that defied simple categorization. While some critics were looking for a high-integrity horror remake, others were searching for a modern successor to the Indiana Jones brand equity. This split in the critical audience analytics created a fascinating narrative around the film's professional ROI. The initial professional reviews were a study in balanced portfolio management. Many prestigious critics recognized the film as a high-performance piece of summer entertainment. They praised Stephen Sommers for his operational discipline in balancing the humor and the horror, providing a narrative that was accessible without sacrificing its technical integrity. Roger Ebert, a high-value analyst in the film market, gave the film a positive audit, noting its unabashed joy and its commitment to the adventure genre. This was a critical signal for the general audience, reinforcing the idea that The Mummy offered a high level of fun-to-value ratio. However, a segment of the critical market, the legacy horror group, felt a sense of capital loss, arguing that the film had traded the creeping dread of the 1932 original for a high-speed, digital-heavy spectacle. This critique was a form of loss aversion, where the experts mourned the loss of the original brand's darker tone. From an analytical perspective, the film's critical ROI was found in its technical prestige. Even the most skeptical reviewers had to perform a positive audit of the visual engineering provided by Industrial Light and Magic. The sand face and the regenerating priest were recognized as significant benchmarks in the history of digital effects. This technical validation was a primary driver of the film's industry reputation, ensuring that Universal's capital investment in ILM was seen as a masterstroke of innovation. The audience score on early data platforms showed a massive delta between the professional critics and the general public, with the public delivering a near-unanimous strong buy rating. This gap in the analytics proved that Universal had successfully decoded the desires of the global consumer, even if the highbrow critics were still managing their own intellectual biases. Let us analyze the awards impact of the film, a metric that measures the prestige capital of a cinematic asset. The Mummy was not engineered for the Academy's Best Picture portfolio, but it dominated the technical and genre-specific awards categories. It secured a nomination for Best Sound at the Academy Awards, a testament to the high-fidelity auditory engineering we decoded in earlier steps. This was a significant piece of industry recognition, validating the work of the sound design team as a top-tier asset in the 1999 market. The film also performed at a high RPM level at the Saturn Awards and the MTV Movie Awards, capturing multiple nominations for Best Action and Best Special Effects. These genre ROI wins acted as a form of brand protection, solidifying the film's status as the definitive adventure epic of its era. We must also audit the human capital recognition. Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz received significant critical praise for their chemistry and their ability to ground the high-stakes action with relatable human emotions. This wasn't just a star power play, it was a recognition of their individual technical integrity as actors. Fraser's ability to move between high-intensity combat and self-deprecating humor was seen as a unique asset that many other action leads lacked. Rachel Weisz was praised for bringing a level of academic weight and prestige capital to a role that could have been a simple damsel in distress. This critical validation of the leads increased their individual market value and ensured that the film would be remembered as a character-driven success story, rather than a hollow CGI exercise. The legacy forecast of the film's critical standing has only increased over the decades. In modern film analytics, The Mummy is often cited as a blue-chip example of the perfect summer blockbuster. Retrospective reviews often perform a total audit of the film's pacing, humor, and practical-to-digital balance, concluding that it has aged with higher technical integrity than many of its contemporaries. This is the ultimate, long-tail ROI for a film, when the initial critical volatility settles into a state of permanent prestige. The film is now a reference-quality asset for modern directors who are trying to decode the formula for a fun, high-stakes adventure. The 99 version is seen as the benchmark for how to reboot a legacy brand with respect, innovation, and a high level of narrative ROI. In conclusion of this 12th step, we have decoded the professional and industry reception of The Mummy. We have seen how the initial critical split eventually stabilized into a high-prestige legacy, and how the film's technical and human assets were recognized on the global award circuit. Universal's $80 million enterprise didn't just earn gold at the box office, it earned a permanent place in the portfolio of cinematic history. We have moved from the box office data to the critical ledger, performing a total prestige audit of this high RPM success story. We have framed the critical reception and the award's impact. Now, we reach the final destination of our 13-step autopsy. In our final step, we will examine the final legacy and harmony of art, tech, and capital. We will synthesize everything we have learned to provide the ultimate resolution of the 1999 Mummy. We will look at how this film changed the batasse of the blockbuster forever and why it remains the gold standard for desert epics. Get ready, because the audit is almost complete and the final return on your attention capital is about to be delivered. As the final grains of sand settle back into the silent ruins of Hamunaptra, we reach the ultimate resolution of our 140-minute masterclass. To decode The Mummy, 1999, is to witness a rare and perfect alignment in the cinematic firmament, a state-of-art tech-capital harmony that has rarely been replicated in the decades since. This $80 million production enterprise began as a high-stakes gamble on a legacy brand, and it concludes as a definitive proof of concept for the competency-driven, global blockbuster. We have analyzed every dollar of the initial capital exposure, every variable of the kung fu and swordplay biomechanics, and every psychological layer of the individual versus the supernatural machine. The result is not merely a film that achieved its break-even logic, but a durable cultural asset that continues to provide emotional and financial dividends. In this final audit, we recognize that the true batass or law of 1999 cinema was the disciplined integration of high-end technology with a sophisticated understanding of classic adventure storytelling. We begin our final synthesis by re-evaluating the financial foundation of this enterprise. The $80 million investment was not just spent, it was strategically allocated to ensure a high level of genre prestige. By prioritizing technical accuracy in the practical sets and choosing industrial light and magic for the digital rot, Universal Pictures created a reference-quality asset that defied the typical depreciation of summer remakes. The film's ROI is found in its long-tail resilience, where its status as a definitive example of fun-to-value ratio has secured its CPM and market value across digital syndication and streaming platforms. We must interpret the studio's success as a triumph of risk management. They identified a global demographic hungry for a return to the Amblin-style adventure and delivered a product with a perfect product-market fit. This financial discipline allowed the film to survive the shadow of Star Wars and become a permanent fixture in the global media landscape, proving that a well-managed budget is the most powerful weapon in a filmmaker's arsenal. From a technological perspective, The Mummy stands as a monument to the power of precision during a period of intense disruption. The integration of early motion capture and digital fluid dynamics was not just an aesthetic choice, but a masterstroke of visual engineering. We have decoded the physics of the sandstorm, where variables like particle behavior and lighting physics were treated with the respect usually reserved for scientific journals. By utilizing 35mm film to capture these details, the filmmakers created a tactical aesthetic that resonates with the audience's own search for authenticity. The film's accuracy ROI is immense. It established a new industry standard for the portrayal of the supernatural, proving that the audience values the hard truth of practical sets over the easy lie of total CGI environments. This commitment to technical excellence is the engine that drives the film's enduring cultural capital, making it a reference point for every adventure film that followed. The psychological dividend of this masterclass is found in our decoding of the competency archetype. Rick O'Connell is the ultimate expression of individual proficiency in an era of high-intensity conflict. His psychology, defined by tactical stoicism, a dry wit, and a relentless commitment to technical integrity, provides a profound emotional ROI for an audience that seeks heroes who are capable but grounded. We analyze his victory not as a triumph of brute force, but as a triumph of analytical depth and strategic partnership. By being more resourceful than the ancient force that tried to liquidate him, Rick offers a blueprint for leadership under pressure. The film's emotional product-market fit is perfect for a global audience seeking heroes who can master the batass of a new environment through humility and hard work. This psychological resonance is the secret sauce that ensures the film's brand equity remains high, even as the global landscape continues to shift. As we explore the operational machinery of the production itself, we recognize that the film was a masterclass in production management and efficiency. The time equals capital philosophy governed every logistical decision, from the high-altitude shooting in Morocco to the sophisticated multi-unit coordination of the Cairo chase. The filmmakers decoded the variables of geography and weather with the same precision Evelyn applies to a hieroglyphic scroll, ensuring that every dollar of the budget appeared on screen with devastating visual and auditory clarity. This operational excellence is a form of brand protection. It ensures that the film never feels dated or hollow, maintaining its prestige across all distribution formats. The synergy between the Hollywood management style and the Moroccan local expertise created a synergy ROI that is rare in the high-pressure environment of global co-productions, resulting in a durable asset that remains a benchmark for the industry. Here is the final performance audit for The Mummy 1999. First, the initial capital exposure was approximately $80 million. This secured high production value and established the film as a premium summer event. Second, the product market fit was targeted at the global adventure and family market. This captured a high RPM global demographic that was underserved by the darker trends of the era. Third, the technical accuracy utilized a balance of practical effects and industrial light and magic innovation. This established an industry standard for creature realism that still holds up 25 years later. Fourth, the star power ROI was anchored by the chemistry of Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. This provided a financial anchor and emotional trust equity that allowed the audience to invest in the characters. Fifth, the long-tail valuation has remained evergreen for over 2 decades. This resulted in high digital CPM, multiple sequels, and a permanent place in the theme park market. Finally, the legacy status is the badass of the adventure remake. It is now a permanent piece of cultural capital in the history of Universal Pictures. The marketing strategy and audience analytics we decoded proved that a sophisticated, data-driven approach to promotion is essential for the success of a high-stakes enterprise. By targeting the legacy segment and the high RPM youth demographic, the marketing team mitigated investor risk and secured a strong market position. The film's technical hook, the screaming sand face, was a masterpiece of CPM-driven advertising, proving that authenticity and process innovation are the ultimate marketing assets in a cluttered media landscape. We must interpret the film's global success as a result of its universal archetypes, the lone hero, the brilliant scholar, and the mathematical truth of the ancient curse. These elements translate across all cultural boundaries, ensuring a high level of international ROI and a durable presence in the global media marketplace. The film's transition to the home entertainment market was the final piece of the break-even logic, turning a theatrical release into a reference-quality asset that fans continue to collect and stream. In the final analysis, The Mummy 1999 is a testament to the harmony of the process. Every variable, financial, technical, and artistic, was calculated to achieve a specific emotional and analytical outcome. The film decodes the relationship between the individual and history, showing that while capital can buy maps and camels, it cannot defeat the scientific certainty of a team that has mastered the badass of cooperation. This is the ultimate law of our masterclass, that truth is the ultimate ROI. Whether it is the truth of the desert, the truth of the budget, or the truth of the human heart, it is the pursuit of this accuracy that gives a film its lasting power. We conclude this deep dive with the understanding that this movie is not just a monster story, it is a clinical study in the resilience of human competency and the enduring beauty of a well-executed plan. It is a masterclass in the business and beauty of modern cinema, where the gears of reality and the dreams of art grind together to produce a spark of cinematic excellence. As we close the file on this $80 million global audit, we reflect on the image of the sun rising over the dunes of Morocco one last time. It is a symbol that does not merely represent a new day, but focuses the entire universe of art, tech, and capital into a single, crystalline point of storytelling discipline. Stephen Sommers, Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, and the entire ILM team operated with the same technical integrity as the ancients themselves, delivering an asset that remains as sharp and inspiring today as it was in '99. This journey from the libraries of Cairo to the peak of the volcanic city has been more than just a review, it has been a decoding of the very soul of the adventure genre. We have witnessed the perfect synthesis of storytelling and science, providing a high level of emotional and analytical ROI for everyone who has joined us in this masterclass. Thank you for embarking on this deep dive with me here at Stream Mechanics. We have audited the budget, analyzed the biomechanics, and explored the psychology of power and individual resilience. If you found this 13-step autopsy of the Mummy 1999 enlightening, my literature-loving and technical-minded friends, consider this a permanent part of your personal educational library. We have proven that the real badass of the film industry is the harmony of all its moving parts. Until we meet again to decode the next high-stakes enterprise, remember that in cinema, as in life, accuracy is the only variable you can truly control. Keep your zeros tight, your calculations precise, and your vision unwavering. The book is closed, the priest is liquidated, and the audit is complete.